So, guys, welcome along to the newly named, newly redesigned studio, and it's just me this time. Don't worry, me and Sean haven't fell out, and hopefully somewhere down the line he's back with us. But for this season 2 coming in, it is just me, and hopefully I can continue on where me and Sean left off in June and deliver stories with real people. But today, I'd like to welcome Julianne Lynch. Thank you for coming up, Julianne. Before we get going, and season 2 is no different to season 1. It's real people, it's real stories, some of them very heavy, some of them very traumatic. You've lost your daughter, yes, and some people may find very triggering, but we will include some links in this. But before we get in to that there, what I normally like to do with the guests is find out a wee bit about you. So where you from? And
Well, I'm originally from Lisnaskea in County Fermanagh, and I was raised in London though from the age of 5, so my accent's all a bit over the place.
All over.
It doesn't know what it wants to do. And I'm a mother of 6. And up until I lost Kelly, I was a writer, quite a prolific writer. But that's all I really see myself as. I was a mummy, I was a writer, I was a daughter, I am a daughter. So that's really just who I am.
But your life took a drastic turn this year.
It has been completely destroyed this year. And I've had so many people say to me that I'm brave and courageous, and they admire me for speaking out about what has happened to Kelly. But my children are my greatest gifts, and I think anybody who's a parent and loves their children unconditionally, they are the most precious gifts that we could ever be given. And losing Kelly feels like I've had one of those gifts just snatched back and ripped from me, and it's changed me as a woman. I am not the same person I was almost 32 weeks ago. I am completely changed. I feel like everything about me has been altered, and I know I'll never be that woman again. I look at the past, I look at the memories that I've captured over the years, and it's almost looking at a stranger because I don't feel that way anymore. I am just constantly afraid now, but I'm also fighting with everything that I have, and it's the only thing now that I can do for Kelly. I honoured her in life, so I will honour her in death, and then maybe if we do get justice, I will have some kind of peace to be able to grieve, whereas at the moment I don't think I'm able to grieve properly. Obviously I have my days where I'm breaking down. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to cook. I don't want to do anything. And then there's days when I do have that fire in me, and I follow my routine. I get the children ready. I tend to everything, and I have an energy within me that kind of pushes me. But to be able to grieve properly, you have to be able to channel all the processes, and I can't do that at the moment because I'm just so enraged with the injustice of the past 32 weeks, and I'm tormented by my daughter's last moments on earth, and until I get answers, I don't think I'm ever going to be at peace.
Firstly, I'm so sorry because I'm going to ask you questions, and just I have never. So we had taken time off, but we have never received so many messages and people that message us. There's always people that message saying, "Oh, can you cover this or you can cover that?" But the amount of times that we were tagged in your posts and says, "Look, you need to get this lady on," and I did watch some of them, and we were on a break at that point, and I was like, "This is something that we want to cover," because there was so many things that you brought up in your videos that we will go on to talk to here. But just before we do, it's nice to get an idea of Kelly. Was she your oldest?
She was my second eldest. She was my little princess, because if anybody's been following my story, they'll see that Kelly literally was just like an alternative princess with her style and her piercings. But even from a very young age, she was just this unique little individual. She had a very strong personality, but while she had gutso within her, she was still so gentle and so delicate. I always refer to her as my delicate little flower or my delicate silly bean. It's just something silly banter we'd had between ourselves. But she was such a special person, and I will not lie when I say that she drove me insane at times, because children do that.
That's exactly what they
Like,
do.
you know, like parenting isn't some perfect journey. Parenting is something that you learn along the way, and with each child, you learn something new. It's kind of like a rite of passage as we get older as parents. And with being the mother of 6 children, I've noticed my parenting with my youngest, who's only 4, is completely different to the first 2 with Kelly and Christopher. But I mean, Kelly and Christopher were just such close pals. You know, I never had planned to have children. I was, you know, just wanted to go to uni and have a big career. But then the children came, and I could not imagine my life without them. But Kelly she was perfect. But as I like to say, she was perfectly imperfect. And I loved her flaws and all. And she was quite possibly one of the best parts of me. She was this vibrant girl who would go out of her way for anybody. There was no meanness in her, there was no badness in her, and I can't say anything bad about her because I just loved her so much, and I still love her, and I just long for her to be here, because with her not being here, I feel that there will always be something missing from me. And I often say to people that I literally have to wait the rest of my life before I can ever see her again, because all I can look to is the past. And people would normally be afraid of revisiting the past, where I have before. But now the past is my safety net, because it's the future I'm afraid of.
Well, it was. We'll go now back to the time when you got the Didnt news, but more around that was. So, what age was Kelly?
She was 23.
She was 23, and I'll let you tell us more of.
Yeah. It was Kelly's younger sister's 12th birthday on the 13th of March, and we always let the children have whatever they wanted for their birthday, tea and cake. But unfortunately that morning Kelly had got a phone call from her boyfriend to say that his brother had not come home and was missing. And Kelly was obviously concerned. But about 11 o'clock that morning, it was confirmed that her boyfriend's brother's body had been found and he was dead. And Kelly was initially upset, and obviously I cried with her. I mean, like we all would cry, you know, hearing the death of a young one, and seeing young people reacting to that kind of news. It kind of drums at home how devastating loss affects our young people as well as older people and people in our age group. So she was really, really upset, and she didn't know what to do with herself. So I just consoled her, and we went about our days. She came into Banbridge with me. We got Poppy at KFC, and we sat in at KFC and ice cream. Went back home, and she later on that evening decided, I'll go down to Monahan because he wants me down. You know, he wants me to be there.
Her boyfriend lived
Her
in Monahan.
boyfriend, yeah.
And she was going down to comfort her boyfriend.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I was apprehensive at first about her going down, because 2 years previously, her grandfather passed away, and within 4 weeks of that, her 11-year-old cousin passed away. So I had seen what death did to Kelly in more recent times. She just didn't handle death well. She didn't handle wakes well. And I knew that if it's going to be a traditional Irish wake, the house will be literally full. And I was afraid of how Kelly would react to that. But she made the decision herself to go down. So she was dropped down to Monahan. So the last time I actually saw Kelly alive was about 7:30 on Wednesday the 13th of March. And she kissed me, she hugged me, she did this silly thing where she always rubbed her cheek against my cheek and says, "I'll see you soon, Mammy." She always called me Mammy. And she said, "I love you." And away she went. I would never have thought that what was going to come to our door on the Sunday would happen. But over the next 48 hours, we texted, we sent silly memes, we talked about death. I talked to her about comforting her boyfriend, and she was uncomfortable. And she was uncomfortable with all the drinking. A lot of drinking was going on. And I did try to tell her, like, maybe step back. If you're feeling like a spare part, ask, does anybody need any help? Go do the dishes, make cups of tea. But she just didn't want to do that. So I think she went to the bedroom and kind of closed herself off. But on the Friday morning, I'd seen I'd missed a phone call from her. And this is Friday, the 15th of March.
So just so I'm clear, on she left Wednesday evening, and this Friday, okay?
Yeah. So on Friday, the 5th of March, sorry, I just hit that.
Oh, you're fine.
15th of March, we exchanged a couple of texts, and I seen that she wasn't sleeping. It was shortly before 6 a.m. So I rang her, and she was crying. She said she was sick of all the drinking. She didn't want to be there. It was just too sad. And so I arranged with her, if you want to come home, after Matthew goes to work, one of us will go down and bring you back home. And she says, yeah, that's grand.
So you'd missed the call, but you had exchanged messages on the Friday, and you were starting to get an understanding that she wasn't, and you were obviously apprehensive. You didn't want her there if she wasn't coping well with it, and a lot of people were drinking.
Well, I knew what she was like. I knew that Kelly was never a great people person. She didn't like big crowds. She had her set amount of friends, and she was comfortable within a small number. And this was just too much for her. She was out of her depth. So after her brother Matthew was dropped to work, just after 8, she was going to be picked up. But I rang her just to confirm, just to make sure if I'm going to drive all the way to Monahan, I'm not going to be sitting in the car and you're not going to come out. And she said, "No, Mommy, I'm going to stay. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. I'll call you later." And I was a wee bit annoyed at that, because I just knew that the longer she stayed there and the more she was around the drinking and all that, the more that she was going to be drinking. It's that culture. But by the afternoon, I had texted her to see was she up, and she was up. And we texted each other a few times, and in the meantime, I had taken Poppy to get her hair done. Kelly had paid for Poppy to get her hair done for her birthday, and Poppy was going to go to Newry, to the disco in Newry. And I had arranged with Kelly during one of the texts that after Poppy was dropped off to Newry, we'd go to Monahan and pick her up and bring her home. But at 5:25, she rang me, and she was in the bathroom in a pub in Monahan. And she said she was staying on. And I knew that she had been drinking, because that tone and voice, I don't know if it happens to everybody. Everybody, I think, goes up an octave in their voice and they have a wee bit of drink in them.
So when she contacted you, then you knew that was a Saturday?
No, this is the Friday evening.
This is the Friday evening?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we talked for a while, and then she'd hang up. And then she'd ring me back again. And then she'd hang up. And then about 5 to 6 that evening, she rang me again. She was in the bathroom. And then I could hear the bathroom door open, and I heard a male's voice, and it was her boyfriend. He wanted to know who she was on the phone to, and she said, "It's just Mammy, babe. I'm just talking to Mammy." So she had to put me on speakerphone. And I spoke to him. I said how sorry I was about the loss of his brother, and I also kind of chastised him for drinking. Like, this is a time for family. Instead of being down the town drinking, your sorrows away, you should be at home surrounding your parents with support. And he got angry with me and kind of shouted, but he calmed down a bit. And I asked him, was Kelly okay? And he said, yes, I promised. And I said, will you promise me you'll look after her? And he says, I promise you, Julianne, she'll be fine. So Kelly came back on the phone. She says, I love you, Mammy. Send me pictures of Poppy. So the call ended just before 6, and that was the last time I actually heard Kelly's voice. So over the next few hours, we had some texts with each other, and I sent her some pictures of Poppy, and she was teasing Poppy that she would get her first kiss and things like that. And we were laughing. And at 8 p.m., just around 8 p.m., I had sent her a text, but it was never read. And I went to bed that night probably with a wee bit of false sense of security. I knew that she was out in town, but her boyfriend promised me that he'd look after her. And she didn't sound in too bad a form. And little did I know when I woke up on the Saturday morning that I had missed about 7 or 8 phone calls from her during the night. And they weren't immediately one after another. They started about 1:45 in the morning, and the last call she had made to me was at 4:02. And then I'd seen that I had a voicemail, and the voicemail was left at 4:01 a.m. and it lasted 23 seconds. And I listened to it, but I just couldn't make sense of it. Like, I thought, obviously at the time I didn't realise really what was going on. But when I heard that, I immediately texted her. I was like, Kelly, what was going on last night? You sent me such a weird voicemail. And she has never in her life ever left me a voicemail. Like, Kelly would never do that. And she would never ring sporadically in the middle of the night like that, because she was ringing her 15-year-old brother. She was ringing her 2 other brothers, that she never did that. So I tried to contact her all day on the Saturday the 16th, still no contact. All my messages were being delivered but not read, so I knew the phone was on. So I rang my mother, and I've said it many times before. I don't know why I rang my mother, as if my mother was going to be able to, be a magic crystal ball and tell me everything was okay. But I kind of needed that reassurance because I was feeling sick. I felt that something was really wrong. Mommy says she's probably just sleeping off a really bad hangover, and I was kind of wishing that was the truth. But by 9 o'clock that Saturday night, there was still no contact from her. And I don't know, it's like maybe mother's instinct, but I felt literally like swarms of butterflies were going to just burst out of me. And I tried her again at 9 p.m. and just nothing. So via Facebook Messenger at 9:38 p.m, I contacted her boyfriend. I wasn't friends with him. I didn't have his contact number, but I looked him up and I sent him a message. And I again said sorry about his own troubles, but is Kelly okay? Will you let me know that Kelly's okay? And to this day, he has never replied to that message. And it'll be 32 weeks tomorrow, and I just do not understand how anybody can ignore anyone like that. It's just scary that somebody can blank somebody, like a concerned mother. But I went to bed that night hoping for a reply. I didn't sleep very well, and when I woke up on the Sunday morning, there was still radio silence from Kelly, no reply from him, nobody else had contacted me. And I was so afraid, and I hadn't listened to the voicemail again because I just thought it was nonsense. But then we had planned to go up to Fermanagh that day, and we were going to go to Fermanagh via Monahan and call to the house on the way. But at 12:25, my 18-year-old son at the time, his phone rang, and it was the PSNI looking for the next of kin of Kelly Lynch. And he said, hold on, I'll put you on the phone to my mum. So he put me on the phone, and I confirmed I was Kelly's mum, my name, my number, my address. And I remember asking as clear as day, is Kelly okay? And it was a female officer, and she says, I don't know anything. I just know that Monahan Gardaí are trying to get in contact with you. And I says, but why? Is she okay? And she just said, I don't know. You just need to keep your phone clear. Don't take any of the calls. So I just knew next of kin had to mean something, bad. But there was always this tiny thing in me that was thinking maybe she's was drunk and disorderly and put in a cell. But I think I knew deep down that it was going to be bad news. So, like I do in a crisis, I get on with things. I got the kids in the car, the two younger ones, and went to get diesel. And just shortly after 1 o'clock, the call came from Monahan station, and they asked me, was I Kelly's next of kin? I said I was. And I remember asking him, it was a male, is she okay? And there was a slight pause in his response, but he replied, I'm sorry to tell you, but your daughter Kelly Marie Lynch is deceased. And those words, it's almost like everything around us, you know, me, it evaporated. It's the only way I can, I just existed in that time. And my 12-year-old had heard the call. She had heard the news being delivered, and she was screaming. And because she was screaming, Finn was screaming, and I was wailing, and I didn't really understand. I said, what do you mean she's dead? Her body was found. And I remember just saying, but I want her. I want to see her. I want to see her. And he told me that I could see her, and I could ring back, and the call ended. And I just remembered I had to make sure I got home. There's only a 3-minute drive from the petrol station to the house, so I just knew I needed to get home to the house before the boys had heard anything. And that day is still very much alive in my head, like we are sitting here now. And it was such disbelief getting that news. I couldn't comprehend how it could be so real, yet she was so alive with me on the Wednesday. I just couldn't understand, how can she be dead? And that day, it was just the strangest day.
And I know, well, obviously then it was the Garda, but so they deliver the news to you like that on the phone.
Yeah.
It just seems so cold in a way.
It was really, really cold, and I just could not understand it. Like, we had no human contact from any, you know, organisations or the PSNI, you know, coming to give us support or liaison with us. We were literally delivered the news via the phone and left to get on with it. Like, we didn't know what we were meant to do. We didn't know the circumstances. We didn't even know where her body was at this point. And it was by me ringing up the Gardaí station again and asking, I told them I needed to see her. And one officer said I could see her, that she was in Monahan General Hospital. And I said I wanted to see her, and could somebody contact me? So I got all my family down. You know, we made all the phone calls notifying everybody.
Yeah.
And
what point was this?
This is just shortly after 2.
And when you initially had the conversation from the guards, yeah, when you spoke to the police, and then you had the conversation with the guards, did they leave any info or ask you to call back, or did they tell you anything that had happened, or
nothing?
Just nothing.
We had nothing. This is the reason why I've been so vocal about this. We were told that Kelly was deceased, and that was it. For the first 24-hour period, we had no information. Nobody came to our door. We were left completely alone. And, you know, you're suddenly pushed into this thing where you have to announce a death. You have to start planning a funeral. But we hadn't even seen Kelly's body. We didn't even know the circumstances of her death. We didn't even know what her cause of death was. And when we were on the phone later on that evening, we were denied access to Kelly's body. We couldn't go because her body had to be preserved because it was a crime scene, her body.
Right.
The state pathologist had been called to do the post-mortem.
So when they told you it was a crime, had they told you what crime they were investigating, or had they?
Nothing.
So your minds must have been.
I don't know how I got through that day, because it was so confusing. And in these kind of situations, obviously nobody knows what to expect. But when I look back on it, I expected better treatment than the treatment we got. We should have had somebody in our house with us during that first 24-hour period, liaising with us, rather than somebody who was assigned as our flow from across the border, who, you know, really didn't give a damn about us. And I'm not afraid to say that, because we haven't had a flow since the 17th of April.
Well, did at any point then, did you get a family liaison officer contact you from the Garda Síochána, or was it the PSNI, or is there a cross? Do they speak to each other in that?
Yes, because we had pushed it. Apparently it's with the PSNI. The fault lies with the PSNI for us not getting a house call. They call it the death knock.
And I know that we've heard of car crash or things where they show up, and I know that whatever way you find out is not nice, but to have that human compassion, that touch, that it I know it doesn't make things any, but it's more human, it's more decent, it's more, there's something,
it's personal,
and that it's not a number to them, that there's people here. And obviously you have so many of your family coming in there asking you're saying Kelly's passed away, they've contacted me, and they're like, well, what happened? I don't know. Is that so?
We literally didn't know.
For the first, and when did you find out anything surrounding her death?
We had to view Kelly's body. We had to identify her body on Monday, this 18th of March. We had to go to Navan because she was taken to Navan for the post-mortem. And our flow was going to meet us in Navan. That's who was assigned to us from the Gardaí. Nobody from the PSNI have been involved at all. So we met her about 3 p.m. outside the mortuary, and she had to go in and do some stuff, and then she came out. And when it came to our turn to go in, there was myself and Kelly's father and Christopher. They were just so close, couldn't deny him seeing her. That's
something I want to ask you, and it's not the pry, it's just Kelly's father and you are not.
No, we're very much, yeah. We're a unit.
Sorry, no. So yeah. It's just when you were saying that, and you're, who it was your son, Christopher, your older son, wanted to see his sister.
Yes,
sorry,
he wanted to see.
I when you said I couldn't deny, I didn't know whether you and the father. Okay.
Oh no, Christopher, who's out there, wanted to be there. He wanted to see her before she came home, but it was, again, a very strange experience, not something that I thought would actually be protocol, because when I went into the side room, we'd already been prepared that she had some indentations on the side, markings on the side of her face and that. But I thought we'd go into a room and Kelly would be lying on a gurney or a table or whatever with a sheet over her. I didn't know that we'd be going into a room and a tiny window, and Kelly's feet were the closest thing to us. And she was covered by a purple fleecy blanket right up to her nose, so we couldn't see her mouth, her arms, her hands, nothing. All we saw was the tip of her nose, a bit of her cheeks, her eyebrows, and her matted, messy hair. That was it.
How was Kelly officially identified? The way you have to make a formal identification.
That's how she was formally identified by us. That was the formal identification. But I believe that in behind her phone, which was handed in to the guards, she had her bank card and her passport card in the phone. So I think that's how they got her name. And obviously the boyfriend was at the bridge with his cousin, and found her. So he identified her, but there had to be a formal identification which came from us. So
it just seems very, very. And at this point, had the state pathologist released her body then?
no,
So they were still
working on her.
right. Okay. And the only reason I'm asking them because it seems strange to me that you would be asked to identify someone that you can't fully see. And now I know in some situations that's maybe to protect the family or if there's significant injuries that it's not the last
Memory.
memory.
Yeah.
But it's your wee girl and you want to see her and to be presented that way seems it all seems so cold at the moment. Like I don't
For
I don't know
me,
whether that is the procedure. It just
It's
doesn't
not.
seem right.
It's that to identify somebody, you need to see the whole face. And if there was something wrong with the bottom of Kelly's face, we could have been prepared for that.
Yeah.
And I remember asking the mortuary assistant, what's her cause of death? And he said, a head injury consistent with a fall. And still, because Kelly was found under a bridge, about a 40-foot drop. A head injury, it's a lot to take in.
There is an elephant in the room here. We're skirting round. Your initial thoughts of when you found out your daughter, and you know you have your mother's into. What was your thoughts in initially of what has happened or what is?
See, when we were first told that Kelly, we didn't know that Kelly was found under the bridge. We didn't know any of that information until much later on the Sunday evening. And it was like the information about Kelly's death and who had found her and the circumstances. It was kind of like, spoon fed to us in drips. So like all the information wasn't coming into us. And obviously when you're in a state of shock, you don't think right. You're trying to process as much as you can and, choose a coffin in between identifying a child and then going to arrange, the funeral. Like it's too much. And it was even after we identified her, I still remember just sitting like a zombie, not able to cry, but feeling like there was a wail that was going to erupt from me, and I was afraid of offending anybody, so I was kind of holding on to that scream, and then having to travel back home. And it was on the Tuesday, they kept Kelly's body from the Sunday until the Wednesday, and we didn't know when she was going to come home. We asked, and they said, we don't know, they still had some things to do. And then the mortuary assistant on the Tuesday wanted a picture of Kelly, and obviously to get her looking a bit like herself. And I just remember that Tuesday just being completely like sinking in despair, but unable to cry. It was like, how can this be real? How can this be my life?
But we often find when people get such traumatic news, they go into like a shell autopilot because you can't actually process or deal with that amount of information that you're having an out-of-body experience. You're nearly watching yourself.
It literally was like an out-of-body experience. I couldn't eat. I couldn't function. I could barely think, to sort things out for the children, like trying to contact the schools. And this was all just, coming up towards Easter break. And I was just completely destroyed. But
And had you had any more contact with the family liaison officer from the Irish?
Kelly's father had been in contact with the family liaison officer. And
what information was being relayed to you about the surroundings and the investigation into the surroundings and her death? Had they at any point indicated what they thought had happened to you?
No, there was literally no information, like literally nothing. And I suppose because we were in such a state of shock, we didn't know what questions to be asking because we were just so focused on making sure Kelly came home.
Of course.
We just wanted her home. And it was on the Wednesday, we got the call on the Wednesday to say that she would be released that day. and we'd have to be down in Navan for 11. So we met the undertakers, family friends from Lisnaskea, and we brought Kelly home, you know, to Guildford and Armagh for the last time. And I wanted her home to myself, just for family. And when she came home and I seen her for the first time, and I seen the visible injuries on what I could, her hands and her ears and her jaw and the face, her head. I knew, we didn't know how she had died. We just knew that I suppose she had fallen and had a head injury. At this stage on the 21st, we just didn't, or the 20th, we didn't know actually everything, every detail. And when Kelly came home, I think we were kind of like, we need to get through this next 48 hours, you know, just try to make it and do right by Kelly. But I just stared at her. She just didn't look like her. Yes, she was beautiful, like a beautiful replica of my child. And I had remembered asking the mortuary assistant to make sure her piercings are kept in. Kelly loved her piercings. Yeah. You know, that was her identity, you know, all her different things. And when I seen that they had denied me that, I was just so enraged. It was like, it's the one thing I asked.
They removed her piercings?
All her piercings were gone, like her lip piercings. It was just...
Was there any reason related to you for that?
I think they had took them out during the post-mortem and never put them back in. But when I had viewed Kelly, she had her piercings in. But I don't know at what point the piercings were removed, because they were handed back to us on Monday the 25th. But everybody kept saying she was beautiful. Oh, she's gorgeous. But I mean, like me and the boys and my other sons would sit and like, she's not Kelly, you know, like that is not Kelly. And I examined her and I looked at her hands and, you know, I looked at her ears. She was wearing my earrings and a ring of mine. And that's when I noticed the black kind of knuckle marks on her left ear. And then I examined her face, and obviously there was lots of specialist makeup on, but there's no hiding a shiner. There's no hiding indentations, like her whole side of her face on the right side was completely marked, you know, like she'd been lying on something and it's left its imprint. And then it was her hands, her little hands. Kelly was tiny, like she was just a dinky little thing. And I could see the bruising. She had bruising all around her thumbs and her forefingers and the back of her hands and over her knuckles, and it was both hands. And I remember feeling down her body, you know, what I could feel of her, but like obviously she had been embalmed, so like you don't know what you're touching. But it's the smell. I'm such a vivid person, and sensory things stick with me. It's the smell of the whatever fluids they use, and then the makeup is specialist makeup, and it just still, it's very real in my head. And I have a wee tube of Factor 50 face cream at home, and I can't wear it because it reminds me of the smell of what Kelly was like when she came home in the coffin. So there's things that stick with you. But Kelly stayed home for one night in Guildford, and then she made her final journey to Lisnaskea on the Thursday. And, you know, again, autopilot. And I remember her funeral. I just sat the whole time with my eyes closed. I just didn't want to look. Didn't want to look up. I hated God at that time. I know that some people say you shouldn't be angry, but like I felt like I'd been completely abandoned.
I don't think anybody would judge any parent in that circumstances. It's very much each person how they view these things.
You know, like my mother was telling me off for being so angry with God, but
Some people lean in to faith and some people turn away from it.
Yeah, I've definitely found myself turning away, and I don't want to be like that, but I just cannot understand. I fought so hard for Kelly through the years, you know, got her through some really tough times, and then she's just torn away from me, you know, and I just don't understand why.
We're moving on now because obviously the grief and you're in that autopilot. But now from your videos and from we're talking, it's the sheer questions now.
Oh yeah.
And the torment that that in itself, not knowing and not being kept in the loop and find, you know, as you're going on after the funeral and we know and I don't even want to begin to think how you would go about handling that situation. Was there anybody coming to you with any sort of information?
It was all that people were saying was, I'm so sorry, her troubles are gone now. And I
So this is what I'm getting at. Where was it being implied to you that Kelly had taken her own life?
Yes.
And that was the general consensus then that was being relayed to you from. So and the reason I'm asking that is because I know from talking, and I know from some of the things that we haven't addressed, and one thing that I want to ask you, and I don't know whether you want to comment on that or what, but what have you been made aware? What did the guards say to you that would imply that, or at what point did they come to you with this?
It was on Monday the 25th of March.
Was this a meeting then after
yes,
the funeral was?
On the Friday the 22nd.
22nd, so on the following Monday.
Yeah, we went into the Gardaí station in Monahan and they gave us Kelly's official cause of death, which was drowning. But we had been told a week prior that she died of a head injuries due to a head fall, and we just didn't understand.
Were you told of where the location was?
Yeah, we were took to the location that evening.
You were took to the location,
yeah.
Okay.
And we asked how is it possible, and then they were trying to give us their theory that she was drunk and she fell over the wall and drowned. At this point, I didn't know that the people that were talking to us had actually been present at Kelly's autopsy, and they knew Kelly's list of injuries, but they wouldn't give us her list of injuries. So we went to the scene, and Kelly's father is an ex-Royal Navy clearance diver, and he'd done search and rescue, an educated man, you know, especially when it comes to the water. And we were told where Kelly's body was found. They took her daddy down to the canal. I stayed up top, and it was pointed out the stretch of water in the canal, hardly anything in it. And he was like, impossible. You literally cannot fall or jump from a bridge of that height and land directly straight down. I mean, it's physically impossible. Momentum will take you a few feet forward, you know.
Yeah.
And then they were saying that she died from drowning, but at which point then did she get the head injury? Because there was nothing down there for her to hurt her head on. You know, it was silt, the bottom, like there was nothing hard. And we left that scene with more questions than answers, because if anything, that's when we really start to realise nothing about this actually makes any sense. And on that same evening, they handed us back Kelly's clothing, the clothes that she had been wearing, and her backpack. And we had asked, so you've made a decision already? And we were told that they had all they needed, all the DNA and evidence that they needed. We didn't know whether to question them or not. They handed us the clothes. We put them in the boot of the car. They gave us the backpack. We asked, where did it come from? They said, oh, somebody left it into the station. Anyway, you know, we walked away from that meeting just feeling even worse. And it wasn't until the next day when we looked in the backpack, we realised We have so many questions for these people. But we never looked at Kelly's clothes until the 5th of April. We couldn't bring ourselves to. And it was when we looked at the clothes on the 5th of April that we realised there was no way in hell did she fall. If anything, she'd been dragged through somewhere. And that's when we filed our complaint with GSOF, because no matter how many emails we had sent, we were getting nowhere, no replies. We were just being stonewalled. And I don't know, in grief, when you come up against something like this, when circumstances are strange and they just don't seem right, you get a bit of fire in you, and you imagine that, you know, like, I'm never going to be like that, but you are driven by the sheer tenacity to get to the truth. And when we looked at the clothes and then we looked at the contents that were found in her backpack, we demanded a meeting with the superintendent for April the 26th. And it was at that meeting that so much was revealed and all the inconsistencies were revealed. And there was telephone conversations in between the 5th of April and the 26th where we were told, if you think it's blood on Kelly's shoes, why don't you get it tested yourself? Or if you want to talk to Kelly's boyfriend, why don't you go and talk to him yourself? You know? And we asked, why was nobody taken in that morning for questioning? And they said, well, you can't really bring, you know, people in if they're inebriated. And Kelly's father has said, well, they'd sober up if you stuck them in a cell for the night. But nobody was brought in for question for over 3 weeks. My daughter was dead 3 weeks, and then we started taking statements from people. There was no due process followed whatsoever.
There's a few points, and I'm going to ask, and I don't want to seem insensitive, but I think it's important that we lay all the context and here. Initially, you had been told, and it was implied that Kelly had taken her own life. The more and more you and your husband started coming out of maybe the fog of trauma and grief, as a mother, where was your gut feeling that she?
I knew she didn't. I knew there was no way in hell she would have taken her own life. Kelly was afraid of the dark. She was afraid of heights, and she was afraid of water. If Kelly was going to do something to herself, and she would have done that at home.
And I'm asking you this, and it's not relevant to this situation, but it's for me to try and see if this is why they're using that. Had Kelly problems with her mental health?
She did. Kelly would have had problems, and I've been very transparent about Kelly's mental health struggles.
But I just mean that sometimes that's an easy out for them.
Yeah.
She had mental struggles.
She did. She struggled because Kelly would have had an eating disorder. She wasn't very confident about her weight, so she would have been anorexic, and she would have struggled a lot with her self-esteem and confidence, and just never saw herself the way that everybody else saw her. You know, she just believed she was this ugly duckling, and she really wasn't. So I had always been very proactive with Kelly. Every appointment that was made for her with mental health teams, with doctors, was all through me.
But and I don't want people here to get angry, because I would be getting angry, because I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to the tone and how you were, and there's things I'm going to ask, but you're not, you don't come to me as one of those naive mothers. You were fully aware, you weren't. So when you know your daughter better than anyone, and when they were telling you that and it wasn't sitting right, why didn't they at that point say, why was no one questioned then? Why, you know, like when you sat down with the girls, and this is why, and I know you're shouting from the rooftops now, because we need answers to this here, but I just want people to know that I'm getting the whole story. When that happened, you've had your suspicions, and I take it from the conversation we've had, you haven't had a good relationship with the.
Well, I had never met him in the 15 months they were together. I only actually spoke to him on the phone twice. He had been banned from driving in the north, so for over a year.
Was there things she had said to you that you didn't like about him, or?
Yeah, she she was very, very close with me, and she showed me the messages. I heard
Yeah. So
calls.
and but I'm saying this here because my first thing would have been, why didn't he ring you? Like, why didn't he? Why, the first thought in my head would be, oh my God, I need to contact my girlfriend's mother.
Yeah, there was nothing.
I need to reach out and her funeral or thing. So you'd messaged, you have never heard
No.
back from this guy, and he has never been. And now that's not for you're looking for your daughter's death to be investigated
Yes.
thoroughly and unbiased, but it almost seems like they had gathered this idea, and then that just fitted with what they wanted.
Yeah, and I also believe that where Kelly was found would be it'd be a class issue. It's a housing estate, where settled travellers are rehomed, and they're entitled to be rehomed. Like, everybody's entitled to a home to live. But where Kelly was found is in locality of the housing estate, and we're still in a class system when it comes to policing, regardless of what anyone says. Kelly, they seen where Kelly was. They probably judged her on her appearance, and she's just such and such, and just quickly wanted the paperwork over and done with, and the case closed. But I knew that Kelly hadn't taken her own life, and I will challenge anyone who dares come at me, because now that I have the information that I have.
Yeah. And this is why I say that you know your daughter, and when this come to you, and after you're an autopilot, you're not thinking, but afterwards you're like, I know her. She didn't do this, so I need the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And the more questions left more questions.
It's just question after question after question, because the first thing that we asked was, if the narrative that had been put out was that Kelly had ran off in the early hours around 3:30, 4 o'clock on Saturday the 16th in the morning, and that was the last time anybody seen of her. She was in a group of 5 or 6 people. This is what we have been told. And nobody's seen her after that, so they all thought that she had gone home. Kelly lived an hour away,
Where was she going?
So, like, how did she suddenly just...
Where was her boyfriend in this, or have you been told? Where was he?
Apparently he was still with the group of friends that Kelly ran off on her own. But Kelly was missing for 24 hours. He thought that she was at home. So if he thought she was at home, then why wake up on a Sunday morning, the 17th, and suddenly take a dander with your cousin to the bridge, of all places, a couple of minutes from his house, and find my daughter? And the bridge is not a bridge that you can just walk along casually and look over and see somebody in the canal. It's a old stone bridge, and it's 5 foot on one side, and it's quite thick in width. So you'd have, I'm only 5'6", so I literally had to pull myself over to look down into the canal. So these lads were just walking past and decide, we'll look down here, and they find my daughter's body. No, that does not make sense to me. How do they know to go there? It just doesn't make sense. And then I have Kelly's call logs. And the 999 came in at 12 minutes past 9 by her boyfriend's cousin. But it's said on the news that they found her at 8:30. So what took 42 minutes to call the emergency services? Because they weren't trying to resuscitate her. Because she had already been dead at least 27 hours.
The time of death is approximate at that point. When was it? Back in the early hours of the Saturday morning?
We actually haven't been given a time of death, which is so bizarre. We've queried it. But because Kelly had scavenger wounds on her legs, which would have meant that she had been...
She'd been there longer.
Longer than 24 hours, yeah.
When you went to the yards and you sat down with the superintendent and you said, look, I've received phone calls. I messaged this guy. I don't know whether he's seen it or if you get a red receipt or do you know when somebody's seen your message? But I've messaged. He hasn't told me that if he thinks she's come home, why would I be messaging now she's come home? That to me, like straight away, you've already confirmed to him that she hasn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
So did he at any point then, did you feel like your concerns with the superintendent was being taken seriously at this point?
No.
So your first port of call would actually be the family liaison.
We arranged the meeting with the family liaison, and she had been kind of like pushing our concerns aside. Like she acted like she was our best friend, not to be speaking to the media. The media's not your friend and all. And I just felt so frustrated and powerless because we just weren't being given answers. And the more time goes on, the colder a case can become, you know, getting evidence, getting people in, you know, the night's still fresh in people's minds. And we just weren't being listened to. So we requested a meeting on the 26th of April and we wanted it to be minuted. And we had the opportunity to address the investigating sergeant who literally told us to get our own forensic testing on.
So this is weird to me, right? So when it was, did you say the 7th of April that you'd...
The 5th of April, we looked at it closed.
So you looked at it closed. It's never been right with you anyway. You don't feel right. And so when you've got round to looking at them and you go back and you're telling the investigating officer, I know my daughter, I know the situation surrounding this, and it just doesn't sit right with me.
Mm-hmm.
Did he take any of these concerns? What was his reply to you when you said about you seeing blood on the clothes?
Why don't you get it tested yourself? You are entitled to get it tested yourself.
Why wouldn't he want to test it?
Because they didn't believe that there was any crime committed.
What had there, like? What had they learned, or what do you know they had learned, that this was where they were at? This was where they found a young girl's body at the bottom of a bridge, and they've come to through talking to the people there. They said they were inebriated, so they didn't get information from them. So what has led the Gardaí to say this is the situation that happened here?
Literally from the statements given by the boyfriend and
the last people to have seen her alive.
And that's where because on the post-mortem, on the post-mortem report, it's exactly that story that was given to the guards, that the guards have relayed to the pathologist, that Kelly became separated from her friends after a night out. It wasn't even a night out. It wasn't she was down in Monahan because of a death. You know, it wasn't as if they were out socialising, which irritates me and irks me. But then I think they probably don't want to get embroiled in talking about the death of another young person. But Kelly wasn't down there to have a great time. She was down there to offer support. And the fact that the message and the narrative that was being given to the guards is the exact same thing that was relayed to the pathologist just irritates me, because anything that we say to them, we're being told that's hearsay. But surely to God, what the boys had said to the guards that morning is hearsay. Everything's hearsay until proven otherwise, is it not? I mean, where's the evidence? Did somebody actually see Kelly fall from that bridge? Unless you see it with your two eyes, it's only hearsay.
And what did the superintendent say to you then? So that wasn't the investigating officer. You've now went over, you've got the superintendent that would be above the liaison and the investigating officer.
Yeah.
And what when you addressed your concerns, at what point, how many concerns had you at that point? That you had
13.
13.
We have 13 issues.
Not that but let's go through some of them. So first and foremost, she's scared of the dark. She's not going to be up there. She's not swim. So these are all, but there's 13 things now have come to you. So what other things, so that we, and I want people to know when I'm asking you, I've already watched your stories, and I wanted you on because I want you to be fit to get the truth and the answers here. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to give just one view story. I want to ask the questions so that when people get it, they get the full information of it. Because the first thing that come to me was, and before we go, because I do want to hear them, but the first thing come to me was like, you know you're done it, and you knew it wasn't right. So when you come there, even if in my head they had this notion and this is what fitted for them, even in my head, why they wouldn't address them concerns, why they wouldn't say, wait a minute, Mum's come to me and she, I'm not buying this. Maybe go and ask a few more questions here. You hadn't been asked any.
No.
And, what I find weird is, before this happened, she's making calls to you. Had they asked you at any point, when's your last contact, before they'd made this decision?
Yeah, we gave them copies of her call log. We provided them with everything. And, there's a thing that's been said to me was the probable cause. Probable cause to even bring anybody in for question that morning is the fact that her boyfriend and his cousin
were last to
see her alive, and they were the ones to find her. That's probable cause enough. They should have been taken in that morning and processed, mouth swabs taken, nail clippings taken, fingerprints taken, the phones taken, because as I was saying to you earlier, the 999 came in at 12 minutes past 9. Her boyfriend was looking down at her but still ringing her phone. Why was he ringing her phone? Why was he continuously ringing her phone when the authorities were moving Kelly over so that she could be checked for signs of life? He could see my dead daughter, so why was he ringing her phone?
And in the meeting with the superintendent, did you...
Oh, I've said all this.
And what there was...
There was no answers for us. We questioned the fact that he called the state pathologist to do the post-mortem, but not the state crime scene examiners to come up from Dublin. They relied on the local CSU team, which is basically just a normal Garda who's told where to point or where to pick up evidence or take a picture of this, take a picture of that. And that was it. There was no cordon. The scene wasn't preserved for Kelly. I mean, Kelly was pronounced dead by the doctor at 11 o'clock. Kelly's body was removed shortly after 1. And the road was back open. The cordon was lifted and the diversion from Monahan Town's St. Patrick's Day parade was back on. And how I know this, my sister lives 20 minutes from there and she stopped at the bridge on her way to Armagh and she seen a Gardaí and she said, like, my niece was found here dead. Like, why is there nobody here? He says, I don't know nothing about that.
And what did in reply to each of these, what did the superintendent say to you?
They never gave it. He says that'll be addressed at the inquest. Everything is that'll be addressed at the inquest. That'll be an opportunity to question at the inquest. So we have to wait until an inquest, which could be 3 years down the line. Like, why should we have to wait so long for a simple answer? Why wasn't due process followed that morning?
With what's happened, I take it you've read up more in the situations of what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
What the general practice is for these
Yes.
situations. On reading up to that, how many of that standard, how many has been met?
None. They've literally, they have failed us in so many ways. It's professional misconduct. It's just, they've left themselves wide open for a huge case against the state, and we were willing to work with them from the very beginning, but they just would not answer our questions. And we're reasonable people, but we're not stupid. We're educated and we're not in denial, as some people have said, maybe we're in denial, because there was one saying, everybody knows that she overdosed on drugs and the friends were trying to cover up. Kelly had no drugs in her system. Kelly had alcohol in her system, but there was no drugs in her system. And we also know from the pathology that she had stopped drinking a long time before she died.
So, and there is something there. It's no parent would want to believe that, but that's not what we're saying here.
No.
What you're asking for is a thorough and full investigation.
An honest investigation.
And if the findings were brought to you and said, look, we've questioned we've taken everybody and we've done, but it's, and I can understand the torment in this, in the questions and not knowing, and the full, and it's the hearsay and the back and forth between working out news and all. And you're bound to have got frustrated with working with these. What way was it left then after that interview, that original with the superintendent? What way was that left?
It was left us even more angrier. It was actually...
did you feel that you'd been palmed off, or
I just felt like they thought we were idiots.
Did you get the impression that they're in denial? This happened and you're not dealing with it? Is that the way it was pushed to you, or was there, did anyone at any point say, you know what, or were they, every time you're asking a question, were they like, just ask that and ask that? Or?
No, when I made a comment, which I can't say, they said, but we deal in facts, we deal in evidence. There is no evidence to back up your facts. And I said that that's their job, to find out the evidence. But when we left that meeting, I was just enraged. I felt like a waste of a whole day. And I was just so pissed off, to be honest.
You have now gone on to do more of your own investigation, or had some done. So what then did you do then when you left there? What was the next?
I started contacting politicians, both north and south. I contacted the Justice Minister down across the border, and then I contacted Michael D. Higgins, Simon Harris, Drew Harris, obviously. I contacted various people within the Justice Committee, because I know that if I want to push Kelly's case even after the inquest, I need to be backed by somebody who's willing to lobby for an independent inquiry into Kelly's death. So I started reading up about needing somebody within the Justice Committee who deals with, deaths, like criminal injustice against women. So I've enlisted the help of various TDs and senators, and then I got various MLAs up here. I contacted the party leaders in Stormont.
What's been the initial?
Everybody has been, obviously everybody sympathises, but nobody could help because of the GSOC investigation. There is limits. Because
we're not the official inquest, a lot of people have stood hands off here. But that's not, like, you want justice and answer. You want, and the longer time goes on that there's none of these questions is being asked or nothing's being done. Has anyone come forward to help in this?
I've had loads of people come to me. Like there's been loads via the TikTok. With me, by doing my TikTok videos, I have kind of left the door open that people can contact me, and I would not break anybody's confidentiality if they do have information. So people have come to me via TikTok, and it's how we learned that Kelly was actually in the casino in Monahan, and she was seen on CCTV being berated in public by her boyfriend, yet that was denied by our Flo. She said she was never in the casino, but the security team of the casino contacted me.
And have you got that CCTV or confirmation? Did you get a statement from them?
The guards went and retrieved it, and it was true. Kelly was in the casino.
So, and this is something then, that's where it was brought to our attention, and people had been starting to think, they were like, there needs to be answers here, and in desperation, you're reaching out and you need to make this public to put pressure on things. But you're now learning stuff that's happened, and they're telling you that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
They haven't went and checked that. Now they've received a video of being so rated. In what way have you seen it, or has this been relayed to you from?
It's been relayed to me from what was being said. Obviously, I'm not allowed to see.
No, and I don't want anything in this. Look, I want you to get the truth.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that I invited you on, and I says, look, I have massive questions in some of the things, just some of the more practical things that you pointed out to me. I'm like, that deserves more of an answer than what you've received, and that deserves more consideration and question around. So that's why we had reached out and says, look, do you want to come on? But what other things have you learnt then since? And you've had thousands of people following.
I've had thousands of people following. I've learned that that when Kelly was in the morgue on the Tuesday, she was in the morgue in Navan. He was in a bar in town swapping Snapchat details with a girl of 17 and living his best life. And that girl's mother was so enraged, she contacted me to let me know. And
is just so we know, because this is going to be very easy worked out.
Yeah.
Are they okay with them details being shared here?
Yeah, well, they're fine because I'm not going to be naming them.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I mean, it's the fact though that,
that's not
there was a
behaviour.
narrative that was being displayed and spread around town about Kelly. And well, in actual fact, this lad's out doing whatever he wants, and my daughter's cold in a slab. And nobody who loves somebody goes out and does that.
No. Well, the other questions I have is, obviously there's no relationship with you and him, but his girlfriend's passed away. I don't know why on earth, let alone you'd messaged him and never received a reply, why he wouldn't reach out, why he wouldn't have contacted you, why he wouldn't have been asking, look, listen, I know we don't see it eye to eye, but it's my girlfriend, I want to see her buried, I want to be there, is there anything I can do? The whole thing doesn't sit right.
It's just so suspicious because we had put a message back to him via our flow that he wasn't to attend the funeral. I just didn't want Kelly's last time with us to be missed.
And I completely understand, because I'm getting from it the type of person that this is, and that you had learned through your daughter that she's come to you, and you can't not let her go. She's wanting the thing, but I'm getting that you wanted better, you wanted different.
Well, she deserves so much better.
Yeah, so
she didn't see that though. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. What then you've now learnt, and I don't even know how you begin to process this. So his girlfriend has, what he has relayed to the police, taken her own life.
Or fallen. He never said. It was actually his auntie who had said, oh, his girlfriend's just jumped. But I mean, she was already dead. You just don't jump and then that's that. And this is from the Sunday, but that's when other people came forward.
But she's come down to comfort him, and she's left. Has he said they had a row? Did he tell?
He said that they had a row, something to do with social media, something to do with Snapchat. This is what the guards kind of let slip to us, and we do know from the experience that he went mad about Kelly being on her phone. It got to the point where Kelly stopped posting on Facebook. Kelly had a very morbid, dry, dirty sense of humour, and she would find humour in the stuff that people would maybe think, oh, that's a bit gross or is too far. But it got to the point where she was posting this stuff on social media, and his cousins would be going on her profile and showing him what she's posting and then calling her names, and he'd go mad. And like that's like coercive control in a way. Yes, they weren't living together, but he was getting inside her head that she stopped, being who she was, because she didn't want to be upsetting him or getting him stick from his cousins. And it just enraged me, and it got to the point where she was just so paranoid of him, going on her phone, that she was continuously changing her passwords and her emails, and it just was not healthy. And I voiced my concerns to Kelly about it, and she had been doing so good, and she had been planning to end things, but unfortunately, with the death of his brother, who she thought fondly of, and thought that he deserved better in life. You know, that kind of put a stop to them breaking up, and unfortunately she died before she ever got the chance. But like after I started getting emails back from the commissioner, and I contacted the pathologist, I contacted everybody myself, because we had been told in the April the 26th meeting that they got the toxicology report back and that Kelly was just inebriated. But I contacted the pathologist myself in June, and they said that it was impossible for anybody to have any details of Kelly's toxicology because the lab still hadn't completed it.
So which one was it? They had got the toxicology report back, or the toxicology report wasn't finished?
It wasn't finished, and the superintendent had said to us that that was a mistake on the minutes of the meeting, that we shouldn't take everything on the minutes of the meeting as verbatim. So I provide the minutes of the meeting.
Well, right. So, well,
it's all confusing.
Yeah, I know, but this is what I'm saying. It gets murkier the more you poke. So when you had said, right, okay, which is it? Is the toxicology completed or is it not?
Yeah.
Is there, in some situations where they may get preliminary findings, not official?
No, there was nothing because the lab still hadn't completed.
So this conversation of she had taken drugs and she had jumped over the thing, well, it's now not sitting. And then were you saying that the toxicology report that came back had led? One thing, have you been given all the information, or is that at the inquest is when you get?
No, my solicitor got us all the information.
You can request that.
I've got Kelly's postmortem and toxicology and body maps. I have all these now, which I'm grateful for the coroner for releasing the information. Just the only thing, obviously, we don't know the statements. We won't know any of those things until the court or the coroner's court. But I'm hoping that we're not going to get to the coroner's court. I'm hoping that with this new independent peer-to-peer review from an external Gardaí station, will open a new line of inquiry.
So you have lobbied?
Yeah.
And this week?
I actually met with the commissioner on Monday.
Okay.
And it was all via the emails. I never requested once in the 3 months that we were communicating to meet. I asked him, I implored him to step in to help us. This is all I've ever wanted, was to be helped and to be listened to. And because of GSOC, there's a lot of legalities there that you can't really cross over.
Yeah.
So he said he couldn't. But he was going to get the divisional superintendent, chief superintendent, to do a report, which he did. But I was frustrated with not getting any replies back from Drew Harris, that I contacted the divisional superintendent myself. And within a couple of weeks of those emails, I got an email on the 21st of September from Drew Harris offering a chance to meet us after he had, his words were, after further examination of Kelly's case, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to meet with me.
So which is it, that they've received the social media pressure, or do you think that he's been contacted by the commissioner? Which...
The commissioner, I think it's because I raised many points, and also possibly with the social media, and
because there's thousands of people commenting.
Yeah, and also because I put a good argument in, and everything that I have stated in all my videos, that's everything that was stated in all my videos was stated in my emails to the commissioner and to the chief superintendent, and both of them were in attendance on Monday. And in the 32 weeks since Kelly's been dead, well, it'll be 32 weeks tomorrow, it's the first time I felt like we were actually listened to, actually heard, not just, like,
Palmed
oh
off.
yeah, like placating us really in a way and giving us false platitudes. There was none of that. I felt that we had finally been heard, and all the issues that we raised was enough to pique their own suspicions, because they could not believe that we were handed Kelly's clothes back in a filing box, an office filing box. The clothes just dumped into a box with a white bin liner over the top and parcel tape to close it.
Because they had instructed you, if you wanted, you can get them checked now, but they're contaminated. They cannot be entered, can they, now?
Well, you see, Kelly's daddy's such a control freak, and I don't mean that badly, but when we looked at the clothes, we'd already bought bags, we'd already gloves and stuff, so we did it at home. We laid everything out to photograph everything, and then we were told by GSOC to dry the clothes out and then bag them because it would stop the mould, keep them preserved. So they have been in airtight condition since April. So because of the state of the clothes, and the commission was concerned about the blood in the shoes, is that Kelly's blood? And if it's not Kelly's, then is it somebody else's blood? And he also was wondering if Kelly had actually been even wearing her shoes, because her socks are absolutely filthy. And we know now we haven't seen the crime scene photos, but it's been confirmed to us that one shoe was tucked in, her Converse was tucked in, and the other shoe was tied. Kelly never tied her shoes. Kelly always tucked her laces inside. And from the post-mortem, from she came into a body bag, she was in a white body bag, and the pathologist describes, what they see. Kelly's hair was tied back. So at what point did Kelly have her hair tied back? Because Kelly never wore her hair down in a ponytail. If Kelly was at home, she'd wear it in the top knot, the top of her head. Kelly always wore her hair down. And it's been confirmed that in the CCTV from the casino and the Diamond and walking out towards the National School, Kelly's hair's down. And that's all around 3:30 in the morning. So at which point was Kelly's hair tied up? That's a valid question.
Yeah.
And was Kelly's shoes even on her? Because her coat was undone. Kelly never went outside with her coat unzipped. Her coat would always be zipped up, or padded a Lessie jacket. Like, there's so many things that I could just sit here all day and list you every grievance that I have. And the questions I'm asking are all valid and plausible. I mean, when I finally got the post-mortem report on the 21st of August, it took me a long time to process. I was in shock, and obviously I spent about a week crying because it's just the shock and the graveness. But now I'm more composed. Obviously I can't say every injury, but I will use Liam Payne, who sadly recently died. Liam Payne fell 4 stories. Now, he had a C-spine injury, a fractured skull, C-spine injury, and he had 25 injuries, including lower lumbar, pelvis, internal bleeding. Now, that's 25 injuries. My daughter had far more, and my daughter did not have a fractured skull. None of the injuries my daughter sustained came from a fall, blunt force trauma. And I can say that with 100% accuracy. She was littered from head to toe with lacerations and abrasions. And so many significant injuries that could come only from being assaulted, severely assaulted. The drowning is just the mere end of her. It's what she sustained before drowning to death. And I do believe that her drowning is just an aspiration, that she was possibly already unconscious. And I do believe that she was just dumped there, that that's a place for them just to end her. And I know that's an awful lot of speculation, but I feel it in every part of me that is exactly what has happened. I believe that Kelly was back in somebody's house and there was a terrible argument, and unfortunately it was probably something that went too far and it was too late to turn back. Again, that's speculation, but I know from my daughter's injuries and then seeing it on the body map that that's not a fall or anything like that.
Well, I know from watching your videos and the support that you received and this information this week, I hope this is the start of the truth. And
Thank you.
like, I know that when we've had, you know, and the conversation, that is all that you've been asking, and it's not like you've been, you know, going off, and you know, it's not like you were trying to work with them at the start. You know, it's not like, and at no point from you do I get this like impression of you know, somebody is deluded or you know, I just get the a mother trying to get the answers and the truth, and I really, really hope, because I hope that in the end, if you can get the truth, it can help you. You know, there's so many demons in that, but I hope that it can help you, you know, process the loss of Kelly and move on to thinking about her life.
Yeah, rather than her death,
Than her
because
death.
at the moment you're just stuck in this vicious cycle of, you know, imagining your own scenarios. And I'm such an overthinker, and being a writer, I'm great at building my own scenarios, and it's not healthy for me. And also, there has to be accountability for what's happened to my child, and there has to be accountability within the authorities for failing to provide a proper service of investigation. There has to be changes, and I know that there needs to be reform, and I know that it's a long time coming, but if anything, Kelly's death and the subsequent investigation should prove as an example of bad policing and how not to police.
It just seems to me, the things you're saying seem so logical that it's beyond, you know, it's hard to believe that this is just inadequate policing, that it's somewhere along the line somebody is going out of the road to absolutely not find the truth. You know, I hope with the pressure and gaining the support of these that you get that, and I hope that in some way the podcast can help press that. But really, more than anything, I hope that you get the truth so that you can enjoy the memories of 23 years with your daughter and not the last, to enjoy the life. And that's the hardest thing, is when it's something so traumatic like this, that it's you're a prisoner to the last few hours of what happened, not to get to celebrate her whole life and think of all. So I just hope that somewhere along the line you can get answers to get to you'll never get past it. There's no, as you said, like, you're living your life till you see your daughter again. I couldn't even comprehend it. I can't. And I actually somewhat have tried to not, because I would just get carried away and that. And I was worried today because I was like, I want to try and keep that we're asking the questions, so that when what happens is sometimes if I don't ask these questions, it comes out, and then people jump on social media and they're asking it, and then you don't get the chance to respond. So I'm sort of like playing devil's advocate, but sometimes I worry people think that I'm not I wouldn't.
No, I don't mind playing devil's advocate, because I can see both sides.
I wouldn't
of the coin.
because I know at some point, you know, what someone's going to say to counteract it, but I wouldn't have asked you up here if I didn't believe that there's something doesn't sit right. Just a couple of things that I had listened to in your stories, and I was like, it just doesn't ring out to me that's right. That warrants further questioning, not just this is the end, we're done, and somebody, and what you believe had happened, somebody's out there that's done that to someone's lovely wee girl and ruin people's lives, and they deserve to be brought to justice.
And that's all this is about. There has to be justice when justice is needed, and I just think it's such a shame that I've had to fight so hard to be heard. I've not been allowed just to follow the normal path, and not that grief is normal, but allow me just to grieve. Instead, it's like I'm putting so much energy into being Kelly's advocate, being her voice, that's all I have in me, because I'm just too exhausted. It's a mental thing and a physiological thing dealing with this.
Just somewhere along the line too, you wonder at some point, is there somewhere that there has to be like a cross relationship, partnership that how cold it all happened,
It's so cold.
that surely there's somewhere along the line that, they can call and ask them to thing, or someone can come up, or, it's not a million miles away. It's not a hard
No.
thing to sort out. It's just a wee bit of compassion and human touch, not like, I can't even begin to think like a phone call like the first one to live to the second one. Like surely along the line there's something better. But look, I want to thank you so much for coming up today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I will at some point we'll touch in again, and hopefully we get an update. It's how slow the wheels turn in the bureaucracy.
It's just so slow. But then it's been said to me that like big people from the BBC never knew until Wednesday. Like, I cannot believe that so many people in the north didn't even know about Kelly's death, even in Monahan, and then the people are shocked that I got seen by the commissioner so quickly, that sometimes people are waiting years, which then makes me think, has the commissioner actually seen something that he knows that has to be looked into further, and he's following the proper channels in order to get from A to B to open a brand new investigation, which I want. I want a brand new investigation opened. I believe that
Sometimes
Kelly...
that's adequate to do the investigation.
Yeah, I believe that Kelly's death was murder. And I believe that instead of going to the coroner's court, it should have been directed to the Department of Public Prosecutions for investigations or whatever they do. I don't know the whole legal things, but like I do know that if it goes to the coroner's court, what the coroner's court says is final, and that I'm never going to get justice for Kelly.
Well, I really hope you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.